what we're going to do is we're going to have a panel. We're going to have provocations from 4 speakers. You know who they are from this great brochure that we produced. A bit of self-publicity, but I think it is good. We're going to get Professor Richard Susskind to speak first. IT advisor to the Lord Chief Justice, pioneer in AI and law. So, Richard, it's over to you. I mean, and you're going to address.
Do you want me to explain myself?
You can explain yourself in 30 seconds, and then you can launch into where you think it's going. Where you think? Do you think the office is going to be the kind of crucible for the fourth industrial revolution?
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The pioneer business. In the 80s, I wrote my doctorate in Oxford in AI and law, and I was involved with the development of what we call the first wave of AI and law systems, also in tax and audit. So my interest in life is how AI, or more broadly technology, will impact and affect the work of the professions. So I'm here today to speak about one particular kind of office worker, the professional worker. And the general feeling amongst professionals is that all this technology stuff applies to the work of people who engage in routine work, but actually there's something special about being a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, an architect, and the AI business will rather pass us by, and I want to challenge that. And I want to start the challenge by a little story that I tell all professionals. It's about Black & Decker, who are the leading manufacturers of power tools. And apparently when Black & Decker recruit new executives, they take them off on a course, and they sit them down in a room much like this. They put up a slide with a gleaming power drill. And they say to the assembled new executives, "This is what we sell, isn't it?" And the new executives say, "Of course that's what we sell, we're Black & Decker." The trainers with some satisfaction say, "That's not really what we sell, because that's not really what our customers want. This is what our customers want." And up comes a slide depicting a hole neatly drilled in a piece of wood. And they say, "That's what our customers actually want, and it's your job to find ever more creative, imaginative, competitive ways of giving our customers what they want." So why is it any different for professionals? Why is it that the problems that clients, patients, students have can't be sorted out in different ways? Or more fundamentally, what's the hole in the wall in the professional services world? Because in my view, and I should explain, my view is based on a book I wrote with my son, who's an economist, Daniel. We wrote a book called The Future of the Professions. And in The Future of the Professions, we look at 8 professions, and we spoke to thought leaders, to market leaders, to disruptors, to try and get an understanding of the impact of a variety of technologies on the professions. And AI is a strange old term, and no one yet has asked what AI is, and I don't really want to delve into any detail. Safe to say that I think there's 2 different ways of defining AI. One is architecturally, when you call a system AI based on the systems that it uses, what it's made up of. So people want to say, well, that uses neural networks, and that's a form of AI. And one can have that debate. But I've always been more interested in AI in a different sense, in a functional sense, what it is that these systems actually do. And what interests me is systems that take on tasks that we used to think required human intelligence. And the phrase we use again and again is, our machines are becoming increasingly capable. No one in Silicon Valley is dusting their hands off and saying, "Job done, we've gone far enough with technology." The imperatives, all manner of imperatives that are driving the innovation we're seeing out of technology are remarkable. And our machines therefore are becoming increasingly capable, which in the professions, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, an accountant, even in the clergy, we're seeing increasing numbers of tasks that we used to think only human beings can take on. They're now being taken on by machines. So at the vanguard, and it's not just AI in the sense we would understand, but when we looked at the vanguard, at the leading edge, even phenomena like in education, that in 1 year more people signed on for Harvard's online courses than had attended the physical university since its foundation. We look at law and eBay, dispute resolution, more than 60 million disputes every year on eBay amongst traders. None of them use courts or lawyers, they use online dispute resolution. We look at audit, and there's a move away from this annual event using a sample of financial transactions to real-time ongoing analysis of all the data. You look at tax, and you find in the compliance world that over 50% of taxpayers in the United States don't use tax advisors anymore, they use online services. We look at architecture, and you find robots building buildings out of blocks that have been printed from 3D printers. You look at the clergy, and there's an app called Confession. A system that helps you, a tool for tracking sin, and drop-down menus offering options for contrition. Everywhere we look, we found uses of technology, and we tried to make sense of this. And on one hand, what we're really seeing in the professions, and this is this very special class of office worker, is really two futures emerging. And one future we say is reassuring the familiar. And that's where technology comes along and essentially streamlines, optimizes, supports the old way of working. And most people are quite comfortable with that. An architect will use computer-assisted design, a teacher will use online resources, a doctor might see a patient across Skype, but that's not changing the fundamental model. That's simply systematizing what's already gone on for many years. But the more radical future we're seeing emerging is where the technologies come along, and most of them are based in loose terms on AI, where the technologies are not optimizing or improving the old ways of working, they're fundamentally changing the old ways of working. So one of my favorite examples of this is a system called Lex Machina, and this is in law. And this is a system developed originally in Stanford University that can predict the outcome of the decisions of courts more accurately than any human lawyer. Now what's very interesting is it knows nothing about the law. It doesn't have held within its bowels the full text of all of the cases in a particular area of law. What it has is the records for 100,000 patent disputes, who the judge was, what courtroom it was in, what time of day it was, who the lawyers were, which individual lawyer, the value of the claim, the nature of the claim. It turns out you can make a more accurate statistical prediction of the behavior of the courts using statistics and using, broadly speaking, machine learning than you can by using an experienced lawyer. But every lawyer will say to me, you don't understand, that system knows nothing about the law. And I will always reply, when a client, and this will apply to any of you in the room, if you've ever got a dispute coming over the horizon, the one question you'll want answered is this: what are our chances of winning? You remember Maslow once said, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you're a lawyer, everything looks like a legal problem. Whereas when someone says to you, what are my chances of winning? They roll out the legal machinery. But they weren't necessarily asking a legal question. And it's the same, and I love this story because it's about dermatology. My father's a retired dermatologist. And when I was working in AI in the 80s, we used to talk about this a lot. How is it that he could look at a lesion and tell that it was cancerous or not cancerous? How could he do that? What were the rules he applied was the question we used to ask. And we worked and talked about the idea of maybe building a system that could mimic dermatologists. And it was agreed that it was actually very hard to articulate the rules that these experts followed. There seemed to be a level of what in the AI in the 80s we call tacit knowledge, some ineffable realm of knowledge that we couldn't articulate, the magic underpinning human performance. And it led in the 80s to a view that's still held by most professionals today, and it's a comforting view for them, which is this: that computers are really good at routine work and can take you so far. But when you've got really difficult problems, the kind of problems where experts find it hard to articulate the knowledge they use, that's where you really do need human beings, because you can't reduce it to a set of rules to put into a computer system. And as I say, this is a happy conclusion. Machines will do the routine stuff, experts will do the non-routine stuff. But as you've seen from the machine learning point, it really is the hole-in-the-wall power drill point. The way that machines are outperforming us is not by mimicking the way that lawyers have worked, and that was 80s thinking in expert systems work. We thought the way you get a machine to perform at the level of an expert or higher is to take the rules from their head and put it into a system. The clever thing there was the representation of the rules. What we're now seeing is a whole body of systems that actually can analyze far less structured data, discern patterns, trends, and regularities. And so you'll see in the article Nature and Dermatology, and I can't remember the exact number, I think tens of thousands of images matched with pathology, you can, using machine learning techniques, generate a model that will actually deliver a higher level of performance of diagnosing melanoma than the best human dermatologists. But the important point to notice there is it's not copying the expert's way of doing it, it's doing it in a different way. We call this the AI fallacy in our book, and it's the mistaken belief that the only way to get machines to perform at the level of experts is by copying the way the experts undertake their tasks. This was nonsensical. We saw in '97 when Kasparov was beaten by Deep Blue. Kasparov was not beaten by a system that was intelligent in the sense of having cognitive states or being reflective or indeed being a genius. it was outgunned by massive processing power, a system that could process 330 million moves in 1 second. A good chess player can carry about 100 moves in his or her head in one moment. A system that had great access to great bodies of data, a system with smart algorithms. And that, ladies and gentlemen, in the end is what's going to get all of us as professionals. That this combination of incredible processing power, massive amounts of data, very clever algorithms, sorting out problems not in the way that human experts have sorted out problems, but in different ways. So the challenge in the professions is not to say, how do we automate the way the doctor, lawyer, accountant works? The challenge is to say, what's the fundamental reason that people seek professional help? And the answer to that, believe it or not, is fairly simple. Most people go to professionals when they have a problem of uncertainty and they lack knowledge, expertise, insight, know-how to solve this problem. We call that practical expertise. So the question for the future is not what the future of the professions is, can we find other ways of producing and distributing practical expertise in society? That's the way the economists would phrase the challenge. And the minute you start looking at the world in that way, you understand that much of the work that the professionals do and have historically done will not need to be done in the future. Look at Mercers, look at Cordwainers, look at wheelwrights, look at all these crafts that produced vital outputs that today we still use, but we've changed the way we work, and so it will be in the professions. And many people say this is awful, the professions give us a rough time of this, and I say to doctors or lawyers, for example, that the law is no more there to provide a living for lawyers than ill health is there to provide a living for doctors. It's not the purpose of these problems to keep the professions in living. If we can find ways of capturing and sharing practical expertise in society using these technologies, then we think that's tremendously attractive. The final point I want to make is a simple one in a way. What we thought, we tried to reflect, what is it? Because people want to say, well, there's surely some features of human beings we can't replicate with machines. So what is it that human experts do, that professionals do, that these high quality office workers do? Well, one category of things we do, we have cognitive capacities. We think, we reason, we're creative, we solve problems and so forth. And we're seeing the emergence of systems, whether based on predictive analytics or question and answer systems. We're seeing systems that in some sense are replacing at least some human functions, some human cognitive functions. Then we've got the psychomotor and manual physical skills that we as human beings can lift things around. And we're seeing immense progress in robotics. And robotics are challenging a lot of tasks that we used to think only human beings could undertake in the past, whether it be in surgery or in other areas. Thirdly, we've got, and this is very interesting, the area of affective computing, machines that can both detect and express human emotions. Because the third capacity of human beings that we have as professionals is we can express emotions ourselves and we can detect emotions in others. But there's a system more accurately than any human being can now look at a human smile and tell whether or not that smile is fake or genuine. There's a system more accurately than any human being can now listen to two female voices and tell whether or not they belong to a mother and a daughter. We're developing systems that are actually, again, not replicating, but in some sense replacing our need as human beings to gauge the emotions of others. So we can't say in so many areas that we're uniquely placed to undertake these cognitive, manual and emotional tasks. But there's a fourth dimension that troubles me, and it's my concluding comment, and that's the moral dimension. As professionals, not only do we offer advice, but we take responsibility for it. Not only do we offer advice, but we often have a view as to whether or not the advice we offer will lead to consequences that are good or bad. There's a whole normative dimension. And there's a huge set of questions therefore arise in the world of AI about whether or not, even as systems can take on certain tasks that professionals undertake, whether or not we ought to let them. For example, I think you'll probably share my unease at the idea of a machine passing a life sentence on a human being, even if the systems can outperform human judges, or the idea of a machine making a decision to and then switching off a life support system, even if its data allows it to do it more reliably, in some sense more responsibly than a human being. So I think, although it's absolutely clear to me as machines get increasingly capable, there'll be less and less for human professionals to do, we've yet to have the debate about this moral dimension. Are there areas of human life, no matter what our machines' capabilities are, that we just simply should keep as the preserve of human beings? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. The Future of Professions, available in all good bookshops.
One is disruption, so helping clients anticipate what might disrupt their business models, modelling the financial impacts of those disruptions, and then formulating strategies to respond. I also use that framework to help PwC future-proof areas of its business. And the second thing I focus on is helping clients with artificial intelligence-related projects, and also using some of those experiences to help PwC future-proof aspects of its business as well. So to begin, let me talk you through an employee's possible office experience in the future. So imagine you as an employee walk into your office. There's no need for a pass because an image recognition machine verifies that it's you. Based on your calendar, a desk or office is automatically assigned to you. Your virtual assistant tells you the location. You drop your stuff off at the desk and you order a bespoke breakfast via your phone. The breakfast contains the exact nutrients that you need based on an analysis of your blood sugar levels, your stress levels and other factors. And then this is delivered by a robot to your location. You ask your virtual assistant via a headset whether Amanda from client X has provided you with the data that you need. The virtual assistant confirms that she hasn't, and you ask her to send a polite chaser. Now, your virtual assistant also lets you know that you're behind your client deadline, and she's therefore, I've called her she. We'll go with she for now. Yeah, and she's therefore allocated you an associate to help you catch up with the work, and she's also prepped that associate and allocated that associate with the correct level of work. Now, after this, imagine in the afternoon, part of your day involves recruitment. Specifically, you're involved in hiring interviews because you want to assess the emotional intelligence of some of your candidates, and artificial intelligence currently does not have that level of capability. Your virtual assistant does, however, tell you that in advance of the hiring interview, she's analysed a number of CVs, chosen the top 3 candidates, and also completed a sentiment analysis on their tweets, on the back of which she's prepared a number of questions to help you in your interviews. Finally, your virtual assistant comes back to you and says, Amanda from client X has now provided you with the data that you need for the client work, and would you like the assistant to analyse this data and create some narrative on the analysis? Being human and the lazy people we are, you say absolutely, that would be splendid, and of course. And finally, you join your team in a collaboration space to brainstorm on ideas on how your team can handle the people element of AI implementations within your business. This is something that requires the input of human emotion. You complete this using a Google Jamboard, and therefore the output of the session is automatically saved and shared with your team. Now, I'll stop there, but based on this, there's a few points that stand out to me and a few questions that this raises. Point 1 is, when is an office necessary, and where does human interaction add value? See, over the past few decades, the physical space hasn't actually changed much, but the technology that you use within it has changed and is advancing exponentially. So currently we work to suit technology's capabilities. We huddle over our laptops and we type away furiously, but that's because that's the level of technology right now. We might see in the future that we shift towards more working with kind of voice-activated assistants, and actually the assistants work more towards how humans work naturally. As AI automates more and more aspects of our work, such as developing corporate reports or automating the processes of invoicing, there is the argument that this will create operational efficiencies and reduce the need to have actually humans in your offices. As company-owned virtual assistants can share their learnings amongst each other as well, you can also argue that assistants can grow their capabilities exponentially, which make them the ultimate working partner. Scenarios like this lead to a number of questions. What type of professional services work in the future needs to be completed in person and via collaborating? And as AI completes more of the work we do, does the office become more of a social benefit and an employee perk? And therefore, will only the large companies with large balance sheets be able to provide their employees with this perk? Second point I had was that there might be the increased monitoring on employees. For example, analysing employees' performances, their well-being, and other activities such as being able to identify possible fraudulent behaviour. So imagine you're wearing a Fitbit, and actually other data sources that you provide from some of the machines, the technologies that you carry, they're linked to an AI system. This AI system is able to detect your stress levels, the amount of sleep you've had, and based on all this analysis, it can therefore predict your potential performance that day. And these are things that we're already discussing with clients. But this actually makes you, this raises a number of questions. Will we be forced all to become the ideal type of employee based on analysis of all this data? And will this cause the loss of some of the individualities that we have and the differences that together, when combined, make us more valuable as teams? And finally, is there a potential intrusion of workers' privacy, and should employees be able to reject such analysis in the future? And I'll finally conclude with the fact that, so I've provided with some scenarios and I've provided some questions that these scenarios raise, and I'll leave you with the following thoughts. So through social interactions at work and the work that we do, we construct components of our identities and our self-worth. How might this change as AI gets continuously embedded in the work that we do? And just because we can do it, should we do it? And do we need to decide at a company level, based on the company's values, which types of office interactions we're comfortable with automating, and which are too socially valuable to automate? Thank you.
Very interesting, very interesting. Good one. And we have two.
Comfort, and I'm so sorry for your loss, and all this sort of thing, which the undertakers themselves will do. But I think it's tacitly there. You're talking about tacit. It's tacitly there, and if it's not there, I don't think we'd feel very happy about it. And I think there are many people in this room, certainly myself included, possibly not 100% of you, but maybe 100% of you, who actually get annoyed and irritated if you're trying to find something out, and it's nothing but recorded voices or menus on the screen, no human contact, and so forth. And that can be really irritating, even if it isn't a situation in which you actually want something answered which doesn't appear to be in the menu, and so you want a human being and you can't get to one. I mean, that's an extra irritation. So these things are very deep in us and very important part of human interactivity and human experience. And they aren't normally thought of, I think, as being part of the job description. And they certainly aren't made an explicit part of the job description. But they are another hole in the wall which is needed, I think, and wanted by the person. So those would be lost if you went too fast substituting human beings in your office for by AI, insofar as you're dealing with the public, the general public. And just one more example, which I don't know if Richard would agree with me on this, even making a will. You might say, well, it's really cut and dried. I mean, no problem. And of course, there are templates on the internet which you can do a will. But sometimes really what you need, whether you've realised that you need it or not, and you may not have realised it, is someone to ask the solicitor who's helping you to draw up the will, asking you, well, you've left, these thousands of pounds to your grandchildren. Do you want them to have it the minute you kick the bucket, or do you want them to be 21 first? And do you, etc. All sorts of, in some cases, family-specific, individual-specific questions about the will, which a human solicitor can raise to you. Now, of course, the thing about, do they have to be 21, do they have to be 25, that could easily be put into a list, and maybe it is in some of these will templates already there. But what I'm saying is many of these things couldn't. So what I'm saying is I think you need to go easy, go slow, and remember the question about the Black & Decker hole.
Very good, thank you. By the way, if you want to stand up and see this wonderful.
Oh no, you don't need to see. You just need to listen.
You just need to listen to it.
So you're actually all right. So I am the co-founder of Nope, you're all good. I'm the co-founder of a business called CognitionX, and we're a market intelligence platform. And because I'm that type of person, I've created some slides. We don't need. Oh, is it working? No, I don't think so. That doesn't matter. Oh, should I click them? Yeah. So this after today is less of a needed slide, because this audience clearly understands that the pace of change is absolutely everywhere. This is the government study on the future of work and jobs and skills. So all there is to say really on that is that it's not just about blue collar jobs, but white collar jobs are also now being automated, and I think we've heard that from every group. And the stat that came from McKinsey was about in professional services, when you're applying specific expertise, up to 27% of those careers could be automated. We asked our community of over 10,000 data scientists how they felt about that, and the community is made up of not just data scientists but people within corporates and generally all professional services. And what was interesting was that only 20% thought that they'd still be in similar jobs today, but 80% understood that their careers were going to change immeasurably by 2025. Some thought about the universal basic income, others were thinking that they would be in jobs that they can already see today, but they knew they'd be different. Oh. Oh no, sorry. Let me just get this back for you. Moving on to one of the great thought leaders in this space, Ginny Rometty. She's also the CEO of IBM, so yes, she does have a horse in this race, but I think she explains what is becoming a discussion that we hear more and more, which is about this man, woman, and machine, and how it's not about blue or white collar, as I said before, but new collar jobs. And it's about augmented intelligence. And again, I feel like that was coming out a lot before in the earlier discussions about how do we make sure that people can work with the machines. And so I got together with some of the guys in our community, and we're looking at this stat that the Economist has, which says that 79% of the people that they surveyed would feel quite excited about the fact that AI was going to allow them to do more work. It was going to make them more efficient, and 46% would actually take advice from an AI. So when you think about that, we looked for good examples across the industry, and the first one that I wanted to show you was me talking to this machine and I'll do so now so you can get a feel for how smart some of the technology already is today. So, hey Alexa, ask Shopify for my analytics.
This week your store had 2,216 total visitors, who spent an average of 7 minutes on your store.
So if I was the Snapping Pig Company, which sell pork scratchings, which I personally love, if I was them, could this be my new board member? You know, could I bring Alexa into the boardroom and have her have it explain what our numbers were? What kind of a space would we be in? What if I had Amy or Andrew Ingram, which is the virtual assistant from X.AI, scheduling my meetings? What if I had the onboarding HR team actually be replaced by Tala, which is an app that can help guide people through the process of what it's like to work at a new company? What about call centers? So Affinity is a company that is matchmaking the grumbling complainers, like you were talking about before, you just can't get through to the right person. They're actually using AI not to answer your problem, but to matchmake you with the right person who can answer your query better, and who they have seen had better results at answering similar queries, or people with a similar level of frustration. So there are millions and millions of different applications. Chatbots are on the explosion, whether they are using decision trees or AI, as we discussed earlier. There are already 34,000 of these chatbots on Facebook. And so it starts to pose the questions that I feel have been really beautifully brought up today. And there are still clearly some unanswered questions. There are things on our to-do list that if we're going to run at this innovation, we need to think about. And we discussed with the community what those might be, and there was a broad spectrum of mass unemployment, lack of creativity, lack of innovation. There was a real good discussion that was had in the surveys and in the discussions we've had. What was the resounding point that I felt was that everyone who was positive about the impact of AI was also very conscious that we make sure that the benefits that are created both from a technology standpoint and an economic standpoint are actually equally distributed. And I think that was what led us to the next 7 slides, which are quick recommendations of how we believe that might be able to be possible. So the first was actually similar to your the request for should we have an AI magazine. It's how do we provide some clarity on what's going on, what is the current state of play, rather than allowing the media to play out this sort of utopia, dystopia point of view. How do we make sure that we're we're ensuring that people aren't just scared, they feel excited by this opportunity. Mass education is clearly what again came up. I feel quite glad I came last, and also I hope I'm paraphrasing quite well the things that have already come up today, because reskilling and educating people to be able to work with the machines is clearly an important thing that we start to do. In the UK, we have an incredible opportunity now to really innovate, and we've discussed how to get that done. And one of the ways is to make sure we're getting more funding into these innovative startups that are here today, and that might be through investment. It might also be through public spending into those businesses. But either way, we must have enough investment into startups so that they have the time to innovate, and the UK can prosper. I think the jury is kind of coming to a conclusion that we're going to have some kind of policy similar to a universal basic income. Whether they call it that or not, I couldn't say. But we must think about it seriously. Are we taxing robots? Are we taxing humans? Are we taxing companies more? I know everybody in this room is probably thinking about it a lot, and that came up in our discussions. Every company should have an AI ethics board. It's a bold statement, but if we want to have people having these discussions, should we be talking and encouraging companies to do that themselves internally rather than it always coming from the outside? This here is the partnership on AI, which is Microsoft and DeepMind and IBM. When you're building machines, as everybody in this room knows, it comes down to the algorithms that are being written, the data sets that machines are being trained on, how these AI are being deployed. And we really need more diversity from a gender and a race perspective in all three of those areas if we're going to ensure that the benefits are distributed. And lastly, I don't think we can put this AI back in the box. And so really it's about empowering everyone to realize that this is something for them to think about, not just for the techies or the people who are building AI. It's every single person needs to be thinking now about how they will start to work with machines. How they go home at night and ask Alexa to play music is a good way to start, but there are many other ways to do that. Thank you.
Very good.
Network, that consumer view of diagnosing the melanoma, right? Where do I buy it? Because I want something better than the consultant I would go to. Is that already available? How soon is it going to be available? So I then go to the consultant with a better diagnosis and discuss treatments.
Here, and then we'll go. You had a stand up, please.
Hi, Andy Forrest. It's an altruistic question, actually, but how are we going to support disconnected and disaffected communities in the third world, for example, where technology is moving at an incredible pace, and it could be tomorrow that in Central Africa, within a very short space of time, folks are going to be connected. So how are we going to help and support those communities with AI concepts, practical uses of AI, and ethics and just basic understanding?
Okay. Tabitha, ethics boards. Can you stand up, actually? It's probably better if you do that.
Ethics board on AI is called the Partnerships on AI, and it was set up with DeepMind, which is obviously now owned by Google, Microsoft, IBM, Facebook, and Amazon. And they have recently appointed independent people to the board, as well as individuals from their own companies. I think that was where some of the inspiration, a lot of the inspiration came from. There's also obviously the Alan Turing Institute, which everyone knows, which is set up by the UK government, which has an ethics board. And just every discussion we're having with people, everyone talks about sort of foreseeing what might happen if, and that often isn't conducive to making revenue. So I think you do need to split those two things into different groups of people. But I'll also send you a list of some other boards I found.
Thank you. Where can Chris buy Maggie, Jasmine? Would you? I mean, you want to run with one of those?
Can I'll talk about.
Well, actually,
You talk about
home, if that's okay.
home.
Yeah.
Can you talk about abroad?
Well, I was just going to say something about abroad. I went to a day-long session run by the Institute of Development Studies of Sussex in London the other day basically about these issues. And you said about Africa, I was absolutely amazed at the statistics they gave on the number of African youngsters who have got some sort of either a smartphone or something like that, and it was something like 85% or something like that. Now I can't believe that includes the youngsters in the countryside, the rural ones, but possibly it does. But certainly it was huge.
I just cited Africa as an example.
Yes, but I mean, yes, but what I'm saying is you are absolutely right, and it's already here. I mean, they already are connected. You know.
Okay. You want to talk about home? Ask the Ruth question for the speaker in the UK and Europe. Yeah.
Mine's linked to education. So, not so long ago, I rang my head teacher and I said, are you educating kids in at least a high level of what artificial intelligence is, what virtual reality is, what blockchain is? And this was in secondary school, and he said, no, they're not started. So, and I challenged him and I said, well, how can kids therefore be motivated to go to university and actually do a machine learning course or then go on to do a machine learning PhD? And I'm from Wolverhampton. I then actually spoke to my family in San Francisco, and my cousins are in primary school and they already know what blockchain is, artificial intelligence is, virtual reality is, and they're already really excited about it. They're on Coursera already learning things, so there's a huge kind of knowledge gap there, but it's because of people's environments and upbringing. It's not their own faults. So I think that the solution really is education, and it's not going to come easily, it's going to come through kind of hard graft. And one of the things I'm doing is presenting at schools from kind of underprivileged backgrounds, not in kind of a deep technical level, but just saying, hey, look, this is artificial intelligence, this is virtual reality, this is blockchain, and actually these are the technologies that are going to shape your future. If you're interested, here are some websites such as Khan Academy, Coursera, feel free to get involved or ping me a note. But it's more, rather than getting involved at a technical level, just educating them in sort of, this is what's going to shape your future. Yeah.
Okay, the last three questions, then we'll wrap it up. And what this side, the optimistic interpretation.
I think it's spreading it. It's not solving it, it's spreading it.
Do you want to say one more sentence on that? Because that's kind of, we're all hanging on your words,
Well, I mean, because in even places like Africa, which one thinks of, as not having this stuff available, actually it's very much more available already than we imagine. And of course India is a leader, it has been for many years a leader in AI and computer technology. So those places are coming in, starting to face the same sorts of problems that we've got. So the problem's being spread. I don't think it's being solved for them just because they've been parachuted into it without having gone through, all the sort of foreplay, if you like, which we've been going through since the Industrial Revolution.
Good. Well, look, it's between 5 and 10 past 6.
And they want to be building and extending their community. So I'm really, really pleased about this. And we'll come over there and we'll see 230 people who are all enthusiastic about AI. Many would like to have been in the room here, which they couldn't. So we got even bigger discussions we can have in the months to come. So I don't know if you have anything to add to this.
We just need to find a better venue in the House of Commons, that's the point, after the election, but who knows. When we get a marquee out there instead of the...
This is AI use cases. Memorable moments include the use case to end use cases, I like that. And I also thought, Michael, I thought your let's really get at the world of work, and let's get some data to kind of make some data driven as an AI community judgments about what we're basically. If you're optimistic, you're upbeat, and if you're pessimistic, downbeat about it. That was enjoyable. I thought the AI magazine. Obviously this has to happen. The mood or the whole, I thought was a moment for me, and some great introductions from the tables, and in which it became clear that actually all of you, one way or another, thought an AI-driven, algorithm-driven magazine had to be how this was configured in one way or another. And then our remarkable presentations, the whole, that was good. The ethics board, the disruption, and Maggie, your kind of profound words really, drawing our attention to essentially considered optimist is how I would describe you. So with considered optimism and lots of interesting ideas, let's move over to the Millbank Tower.